please help the channel by pushing the like button and leaving a comment. I'll write back to you. Don't forget to subscribe and push the notification bell. If you feel you're able to support my work, please consider pushing the thanks button. Just push this button and tip what you like. Everything helps. Above all, please share with your friends. The GRITHER. Retold by Huw Carr. It was a cold and snowy Christmas Eve, and the family was gathered in the living room. The children, James and Stephanie, were eagerly looking at the small pile of presents under the winking lights of the tree, and wishing for it to be Christmas morning. They were both wide awake and restless. Their mother and father sat by in comfortable lounge chairs. Mother was sewing an ornate cross-stitch, and father was reading a book. Their children tried to draw in the open sketchbooks before them with their colorful crayons, but no ideas would come to their minds.
"Can we watch television?"
asked James with hope.
"I don't know,"
replied James' mother, shifting her eyes from her stitching and lowering them upon him with reproach.
"Can you?"
Stephanie, the younger of the two, said impatiently,
"You dummy, you're supposed to say 'may I' when you ask for something. You know that."
James resisted the desire to roll his eyes and sigh as he rephrased the question to the form his parents expected.
"I mean, may we please watch the telly?"
Father looked at the clock. "Oh, there's nothing on for children now."
"Tell us a story, then,"
Stephanie demanded. After Father raised an eyebrow, she added,
"Please? Nothing about Father Christmas. Make it a scary one,"
James said, with wide and anticipative eyes. With a look of mock surprise, Father said, "Why not one about Father Christmas?"
"We're too old for that,"
said Stephanie, who was 7, and as she often pointed out, all grown up and ready to leave behind babies' tales. "Oh, I see," Father said.
"A really scary one,"
said James, grinning broadly. Pursing his lips for a moment, Father raised his eyes and looked at the ceiling. Then a story popped into his head. "Oh, I wonder if they're old enough for—" And here he paused and shielded his lips so that only Mother could see the words that he mouthed. In turn, Mother's eyes grew more wide.
"Oh, I don't know they're ready to hear that. Besides, it's a dangerous story to tell. Now tell them something else."
Hearing that a clandestine and seemingly very grown-up tale was about to slip away from them, the children insisted that they wanted to hear the one whose name had been shielded from their eyes. "All right, if you're sure, but I can't say the name of the story out loud. It's too dangerous. So—" Here he stooped and reached for one of the children's sketching pads. With a borrowed crayon he began to write, as his face took on an expression of pantomime dread. When he was done, he turned the page to them.
The
Stephanie read out loud, but found the unfamiliar word hard to shape.
"The GRITHER,"
pronounced James with satisfaction.
"Oh, now you've done it," Mother gasped. "You said the name. What will we do?"
"Don't worry. It's a long way from the North Pole," said Father with exaggerated, comforting tones. "We won't be in danger for a while. I can finish the story before it gets here. Suddenly, Stephanie looked less eager.
What's getting here?
Father put his fingers to his lips and pointed to the name on the page. We don't say the name, he said slowly in a whispered tone.
What, the GRITHER?
Said James with a smug grin. His face suddenly stern, Father paused for a long moment, looking at his son with reproach. Looking sideways at Father, Mother said,
No, now he's so much closer.
Yes, Father continued, his voice colder. I thought I could tell you the story because I thought you'd be old enough to listen to it. But you mustn't treat the name like a game. He lives in the North Pole, in a deep cave where it is terribly cold and dreadfully wet, and he hates both cold and wet. But there is one thing that he hates above all. He hates his name being said.
Why?
Asked Stephanie, although even as she said it, she did not truly know if she wanted to find out. Because he is the most awful, appalling creature in the world, and full of hatred and rage. He hates his existence, and he is always raging with murderous hate because of how he came to be in the world. Now he just wants to be alone. But when he hears his name, he knows he is not truly alone. So he comes. James was about to see how quickly and how many times he could say the name in a single breath when a bump on the roof made the lights flicker.
Is that the GRITHER?
Cried Stephanie. No, don't say the name, Father called out, as the lights restored the warm glow in the room. He is looking for us, but he will take some time to get here. That can't have been him just yet. We will have time to finish the story, but every time you say it, his big ears hear us, and he gets a clearer idea of where we are. So we have to finish the story before he gets here. It's the only way to stop him once the name has been said.
What will happen if you don't?
Asked James, still skeptical. If we don't finish it, he will reach into the house with his great giant hands that are as large as the window pane, and with his long, long arms, as long as the longest boa constrictor, and he will grasp the head of the one who began the story. His grip is like a vice of steel, and then he will squeeze and squeeze until the eyes pop out and the head bursts like an overripe tomato. As Father spoke, Stephanie sidled over to her brother to hug him for comfort, and for the first time in a long while, James was happy to oblige. His expression remained fixed on his father.
How does he know where to come?
James asked. He found his voice was strangely dry, and even though he sat with his back to the fire, he was cold. He drew Stephanie closer. He has very good ears. They are very large and can hear things from afar, far away. And they get even bigger when someone says his name. Each time it is said, they grow, so they get big like horrible bat wings, and he uses them to fly.
He flies with his ears?
Repeated Stephanie, and for a moment the fear left her voice. That's why it takes him some time to get here. Though, as silly as it sounds, it is horrible to see. He is terrifying to look at. I've heard that some die of fright from seeing his hideous face. And perhaps that is a better way to go than having your head crushed to a pulp by his cold, vice-like grip. Mother scowled.
Imagine my beautiful carpet all messed with broken bones and brains and blood.
And our 2 headless corpses sitting upright in our chairs with blood dripping down them, continued Father. Once again, Stephanie grew frightened. James asked,
Is he like Bigfoot?
No, said his father. He's not like Bigfoot, nothing like the abominable snowman either. Nobody really knows exactly what he looks like, as no one has lived long enough to tell what they saw. That's hard to do when you don't have a head. No, the only descriptions come from those who have lived after seeing what I almost said it. What he does to those that don't finish the story. It is said that he is as tall as a poplar tree, but he can bend his body so that it can lay right down close to the ground. His skin looks like a horrible kind of road map, because the fleshy skin is all but transparent, and through it you can see the thick, hideous, twisting blue and red veins that ripple beneath. The blue is because of the fear, and the red is because of the rage inside of him.
Please finish the story quickly,
cried Stephanie anxiously. A thump outside made both the children jump. It may have been a passing truck crossing the high road 1/2 mile away, though it sounded a lot closer. Mother and Father shared a knowing look with half-hidden smiles, as it seemed to them that the world outside their door was conspiring to join them in fashioning the tale. All right, Father promised. I'll have to, because it seems he is getting closer. So let me tell you that the GRITHER...
Don't say the name!
Both of the children wailed. Oh, I am sorry, Father said, and looked sheepish. I mean, it was born on a sailing ship. It was blown off course by a terrible storm and had become lost in the darkness of the Arctic Sea. The wind outside chose this moment to howl heavily against the windows. Was that another thump they heard outside? The lost ship drifted for weeks and weeks, till all the food on board was gone and all the water frozen. The crew never saw anything but glaciers and icebergs. The weather grew rough and more dangerous, for they were all exhausted with hunger and too weak to fight battling the storms. Some of the passengers were lost overboard and drowned in the frigid Black Sea. Some froze to death and remained below deck as terrible statues, forever showing the horrible pain of their deaths, locked in shapes of agony. Some starved to death, and some, overcome with the hunger and the fear and the suffering of the cold, committed suicide. He was born out of that fear and anger.
But why does he kill people?
Asked James in a small voice, as his eyes kept darting to the window. Snow had already begun to fall more thickly, and dark shapes passed between the obscuring drifts of white. In the indeterminate shadows, James thought he could see the sorrowful, frozen shapes of the crew. Nobody really knows, his father admitted sadly. All we are sure of is that he never wants his name to be said. I have made a terrible mistake in allowing it to be said at all, and teaching you the name.
Is that it?
Pleaded Stephanie.
Is that the end of the story? Will he go away now?
No, I haven't quite finished yet, Father admitted. Mother looked at the frightened faces of the children.
Maybe it's too much. Maybe you should stop now. You can't stop!
James all but yelled.
You have to finish. Make the grither go away. Don't say...
Stephanie said, but again, there was a thump so close to the house, they were sure they could feel the floor beneath them tremble. Father looked at his children. "You don't really believe this story, do you?" he asked and smiled compassionately.
Yes,
Stephanie said.
no,
James lied. "I'm sorry," Father said soothingly. "I thought you would find it fun to have a scary story, but I think I've gone too far with this one. The Grither is no more real than Father Christmas. It's a myth."
you haven't finished the story.
Stephanie cried. Mother came to stand beside Father. Behind them the windows looked as cold as sheets of ice.
I think we should have another story. A happy story instead,
Mother said. "Yes," Father said and slapped his knees. "Yes. How about instead we have the story of..." But what that story would be, Stephanie and James would never know. For before he could finish, there was a crash as the windows behind Father and Mother broke, and two long arms reached into the room. Cruel, giant hands gripped both parents by their heads in a merciless, vice-like grip. Then the children watched in stricken horror as the nightmare hands squeezed and squeezed until the eyes of Mother and then Father popped out of their skulls and their poor heads splattered and burst like two overripe tomatoes.